Hello and welcome back to Plays Well with Others. This is our February episode of 2025. So I feel confident that we can date this. And it's at the time of this recording, it's February 11th. I also feel pretty confident that we can get this episode out in February. So no worries there. We are continuing a past episode, and don't ask me what episode it was, but it was titled The Iceberg of Ignorance. And that would be from season one with 48 episodes from our first foray into podcasting. Yes, those were our overachieving years. We are going to be talking about an article from a woman named Julie Sellers, and her company she does small business coaching or small to medium business coaching here in Nashville, in the greater Nashville area. And her company is entitled Elevated Outcomes. So she wrote an article. It's not dated, but I assume it's fairly recently, that was shared on LinkedIn. May have been this morning that I saw this, so we are totally prepared. But the article, and quite possibly the episode, is entitled The CEO Mindset, Management Leadership, and the Invisible 90. It may be that this triggered my thinking about the iceberg of ignorance, because she equates being a CEO and CEO mindset to what I don't remember what it's called, but there was a visualization of people that work hard act like a duck. So you're sitting on the water and your feet are flapping underneath like crazy. I think that was the vision she was trying to evoke with the iceberg image. But I immediately took it back to the iceberg of ignorance, which if you don't recall, then go back and find the episode. I will probably put the link in the show notes. But the gist of it is that as a executive of any company, no matter what size, generally the phenomenon is that you only know about 4% of the problems in your business. Jess had the fantastic quote from, I think it was that episode. It might have been a different episode, but you were talking about what you enjoyed so much about product management. And you said the whole idea was, if you're only going to get 4% to the CEO, you got to make sure it's the right 4%.
Yeah.
So
that's the thing that I like to do, but it's starting to shift as I go higher and higher in companies, that I need to have my hands on the right 4%.
Yeah, you've probably got, what, 7% now?
I think I'm still in the 10 to 15 percentile.
Okay, that's pretty good. I think there should be a sign somewhere. This is how much percent
You've
of
passed
problems.
This point. Let go of your illusions. You no longer know it all.
I know nothing. So if we dig into this article, and in full disclosure, we completely pivoted the structure of this episode right before I hit record. So we're going to start just talking about the article, and I will absolutely post a link to this in the show notes, because that would be ridiculous to not do that. But she starts off and she said over the past 6 weeks, she was polling her readers, polling her customer base, and asking specifically what business topics keep you up at night. And she proposed 6. She doesn't list what those are, but she says 2 took the cake by far: people, so hiring, firing, and culture, and CEO mindset, which I think we will endeavor to define as this article continues, because I didn't know what it meant right off. I could make guesses, maybe educated guesses on a good day. So let's start out. First category, or first headline is, what is CEO mindset? Yeah, so she says a lot, but it's basically what she gets to is the mentality of taking on challenges and running a business. So you call it running a business as a CEO, but I think all of this commutes. Like, I could be CEO of software engineering, right? So the same idea can equate. But
I think it's taking ownership of like the strategy and the ideas, right? Like, so your mindset is less around like do the day-to-day work and I come in, I do my thing, I leave. And it's more about a level of ownership and investment in the decisions that your company is making. So you're you're responsible for fostering the right environment. You're responsible for setting yourself up for a place where the company or the strategy or whatever can thrive or succeed.
Yeah, and I think that's not a bad place to be, even if you are a employee.
I think it has a lot of positive implications for every level. I mean, so think about it. You're saying I need to be an ownership mentality means that you're not just satisfied with a good job. You want to make sure that not only are you doing a good job, but everyone is successful. So it shifts your focus from, maybe even a selfish mindset to a collaborative execution mindset. You're starting to think in a visionary way. You're not just thinking about the current task you have to do, but what are the implications of this task that you have to do. You start thinking more strategically, right? So less like this is, the tactical day-to-day that has to be done, but lift yourself up and think strategically, what are the things that need to be accomplished in order for us to be successful down the road? So, I mean, genuinely, it's a great mindset to be in no matter where you're at. It's where I want my mindset to be. And I do think I fall often into the day-to-day. So
easier said than done.
Lifting myself up and forcing myself to step back is a constant reminder and activity that I do.
Yeah. And I had a impassioned discussion today on kind of a similar topic. So, being in the mortgage industry, times are tough, right? So it's kind of one of the worst mortgage markets we've seen since the 90s. And there's a lot of uncertainty. And as a result, we've had to make some tough cuts at our company. And kind of coming out of the other side of it, as you well know, you long-term listeners know, I have a hard time breaking from process. I like building a good process that works and certainly staying as agile as we need to be. But I want the process to be my employee, not to be a burden. And so as we got into this situation where we're down some staff members and we're trying to figure out how to go on to the next phase, there's a lot of questions that I'm trying to answer, which are, well, when this happens, if we're making a stance that we're probably going to have some capacity constraints over here. So when that happens, what do we do? I'd like to answer that question now instead of saying, well, we'll figure it out and we'll be reasonable when we get to it. Because that I want to set the process. I want to make a decision now, and I want to put that over there so that I can go back to doing the strategic things, thinking about the bigger picture, because I don't want to be constantly pulled back into operational mode.
Can I ask you a question?
No.
Too bad. I wasn't really asking you that question.
I know. I had to get
mine.
So
do you find that you do more like adaptability? Do you find you have to be more adaptive and learn more, like invest more in learning when you're focused on your individual, like smaller day-to-day job, or versus when you're in like a strategic headspace?
Do I have to pick one?
I find that I was shocked at how much more I'm doing on the CEO mindset versus when I was in more of a day-to-day role. Like it's significantly more for me.
So I think at my core, I am definitely a D in the DISC profile. I thrive when we're knife fighting, when it's like up against the wall and everything's gone to... Is that a swear word? I don't know if it is anymore.
He didn't even say that. Don't worry about it.
No, I didn't. I may beep it, and then that'll be funnier because you'll never know what I said. But when everything's gone poorly and everything's hard and moving quickly and you're trying to solve problems, I find that I thrive more in that environment because it forces me to be a doer on top of being the strategic leader, on top of being the tactical leader. And it's just like, we're in it. Here we go. And when I'm there, I find that I have much more brain power to continue the process, to continue learning. But when I'm in kind of CEO mode, at least in every place I've been so far, when I'm in CEO mode, I can get comfortable. And when I get comfortable, I have to really force myself to, okay, what are we doing next? What's next? What's next? You look concerned.
No, I was, because I couldn't find the mute button. No, it's funny because I find myself looking to my peers or those that have made it further career-wise than me in moments like this on the one hand. So trying to understand how people have made the transitions into this broader mindset, how you go from being excellent at doing the work to actually getting someone to do the same work that you were doing. How do you get people to accomplish the things that you've done underneath you? But then in addition to that, there's a significant amount of market research, because when you start to have that broader mindset of what are the next steps for us strategically, you can't keep looking internal to your company to make those decisions. You have to look external into the marketplace. What's everyone else doing? What are the great things that are happening? And even maybe outside of your marketplace, just what is happening in the world, or what is new, and like what are the new innovations that are coming out that we could leverage within our industry. And for me, that's been one of the hardest things. Is I don't need any of that for my day-to-day job, right? Everything I'm doing on the daily, I can sit down and I can focus and work through the day. But if I want to support my company by taking the next strategic step, then I can't allow myself to be pigeonholed by what we're currently already doing. We have to look at external to ourselves. So it's been a significant amount of additional work to force myself, every morning or every evening to actually take the time to read another article or invest in another podcast or whatever it might look like to continue to push myself.
And
that I think was
really
the most surprising change for me.
Yeah. What's really interesting though, is when you started describing that, I do that a lot. And it, for some reason, isn't in the bucket in my brain as learning.
Because it's fun learning, right? I get excited about it and it's engaging, and you do it. A lot of times you do it, well, at least for me, like I'm doing it while I'm doing the dishes or the laundry. Like I'm making my time valuable and enrichment for myself when it's otherwise would be tedium.
Yeah, I think where I find myself, particularly in mortgage, I've not seen another industry that's quite so network based. I'm sure they exist, but in mortgage, it's all who you know. And who do you have in your phone that you can call and ask, hey, I've got this weird thing. Have y'all solved this problem before? And I did that today. We've got a new product line that's trying to go out the door, and there's a gap between what compliance wants and what the tech will provide. And so I've got a guy at PRMG, so I called him and said, hey, what are we doing? How do we do this? And unfortunately, he echoed that, yeah, this is a pain and we solved it, but it's ugly and I hate it. But sometimes it goes that way. But a lot of what learning at a certain level looks like, it seems, at least these days, is talking to people and finding out what's new and what's possible, rather than kind of your traditional engineering learning, which is, I need to go learn a new skill. I need to go learn this framework or figure out how to use the platform, whatever that is. And I think you just segued really nicely to the next segment, which she talks about the irony of the transition. And because remember, we're talking about this article. So the irony of the transition is, she makes the quote is, the higher you get, in quotations, the less control you actually have, because what's happening is you are pivoting from someone who has your hands on the keyboard, you're doing the thing, and you have instant feedback on what you're doing, to somebody that has to tell someone to do something or give direction or give encouragement, whatever that is, and then you get the output on the other side of the person. So the feedback loop is much longer, which is why the iceberg of ignorance matters. Ideally, if you're building a small business, I think, is you're standing up these roles. And we talked about this too, didn't we? How do you know when to hire?
Yeah.
But as you're standing up these roles and these tiers and you're building these things, it's important to keep that communication clean. Make sure that people aren't lying to you. Make sure that you're not being a jerk and punishing people for being honest and telling you your baby's ugly.
It is the hardest transition I think you'll ever make professionally, though, is going from a fantastic executor of the work to someone who has to support someone who's executing that work. And I've heard 1,000 different pieces of advice on how are you successful doing that. And it's like, oh, you have to be collaborative, and you have to delegate, and you have to trust your team, and you have to, be emotionally intelligent on how to, charismatic with getting people to like come along with you. And honestly, and what I've seen that works the most effective is forcing yourself to stay out of the hands-on day-to-day stuff. You have to put the barrier for yourself. No one's going to do it for you. You have to step back and go, that is not my responsibility. I need to not do that. And in many seasons of my life, I've transitioned in and out of being able to do that, but I've never fully been able to step fully away from hands-off day-to-day of everything. I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I ever want to advance up high enough that I lose that day-to-day, because it's so fun to get in there and really make a difference on a day-to-day. But if you want to be that higher level, and I say I don't want to, but I do, because I want to impact real change in an organization. And in order to do that, you have to step back. You have to be that general that's not part of the fighting, that gives the orders to your team for them to go out and execute the thing that you say that you want done. And it is so incredibly difficult.
I think the way that you do that well is you stay involved and engaged on the day-to-day on certain things. So if, say, tomorrow I become CEO of my company, just out of nowhere, be a wildly irresponsible
line of succession
decision.
It just happened.
Right. Don't worry about it. It's the designated survivor. But so say I become CEO, effectively jumping two slots, I would not be able to do everything that I do today, plus fulfill the role of CEO, right?
Right.
So I can't take all of that with me. But where there are things, like as an example, I'm spearheading, championing, whatever buzzword bingo you want to use, the utilization of machine learning in our data analytics platform. That is something that will change the game. It will change the business fundamentally. That is likely one of the most valuable things that I'm doing today. So if I jump into a CEO role, there is absolutely no reason that I couldn't still be involved in that on a fairly regular basis to help direct the flow of information and to direct the project itself. But I can't go back and start pulling Workday reports for people and doing just the random nicky-nacky things that I do today. That would be wildly irresponsible.
And I think that's a good middle ground, right? And it's one that I strive to strike for myself at some point, where you can delegate out the smaller, inconsequential in the grand scheme of things, but urgent, not important, I guess maybe is the best way to say that. Things that have to be done for individual contributors to participate well in their organization. It is forever to me going to be the hardest thing to accomplish, is actually successfully transitioning from individual contributor to manager of individual contributors in a successful manner. And not everyone can do it.
I think it's wonderful if you have the opportunity to do it at a different company.
That's true, because you're not the holder of all the keys to the kingdom, and you're not the person who knows all of the bones are buried. Maybe that's why it does work out better to sometimes hire someone externally for a role, although, that comes with its own set of structure issues.
Yeah, I don't know that I would 100% recommend that as a hiring manager to always hire externally, but as an individual, like if I'm giving somebody advice, don't run away from an opportunity. But if you've decided you're an individual contributor, you decided you want to make the leap into people management, then, and you have the opportunity to do it at a different company, that makes it a lot easier because you don't know anything.
One of the things that I think has been the hardest for me is when I am like, well, I could do all of this. I did all of that. I handled all of it. I did all of these things. Why can't you do it? And that is a difficult conversation to have with someone who's underneath you, because not everyone has the same skill sets. B, they might be doing more in depth on certain things than you, or they might be going further or being more complete. So instead of kind of doing everything, they're really doing some things. So there's kind of that transitionary lens of having to step back and assess, what's happening. And then there could just be a learning curve where you're not coaching them well enough to get them to a place where they feel comfortable handling the amount that you handled.
I think
And
that's
that's
almost
on
always
you.
it, though. It's if you have somebody that is not performing to your expectations and you say in your head, well, I've done all of this. In almost every situation I've encountered that, it's been either lack of direction from me, what are the expectations, or it's been, they are trying to learn how to do it and they're coming up to speed. So, hey, if I put your money where your mouth is, if you say you can do it, then go walk them through it.
Yeah.
I've gotten a lot of feedback on that. Like even when Jess and I still worked together and we were trying to roll out some more agile practices.
Yeah.
And I had a group of product owners that had never done like a project refinement. And I'm like, all right, guys, we'll strap in. Here we go. I'm going to drive. We're going to do it. And
Time to learn.
I got so much feedback after that. And like, yeah, I'm glad you just took over that and ran it because now I see how it works. Great. And then I got to let them drive every time after that. And it was great.
Let's talk about the benefits of it, though, because when I have been able to move into a more strategic role, or when I even just pockets of time where I've been able to lift up and think of things from a larger strategic level, the amount of just satisfaction I feel as a human increases like tenfold. Even though I enjoy the day-to-day, even though there's excitement in being able to have that quick turn time loop that you were talking about before, quick execution loop, and you can see things happening, the difference in that next layer of thought is 9-day.
Yeah, I still like doing both.
Yeah.
Like, let's lift it up a level and make it feel like we're knife fighting.
Yeah,
it's rock and roll.
That's the best of both worlds. Yeah, I mean that's how you keep it interesting, right? Because you can attack both of the things at the same time. You can see execution, and you still get to kind of think broader and push yourself to have a wider vision, a wider lens.
Which is a big reason why I really like to do yearly planning, and then get all of this, like the OKRs and stuff, out of the way. And then go into the year and say, all right, here we go. We're going to stack them up and knock them down one after the other. And if something needs to change, it needs to change. So to kind of start landing the plane here. So the last point is, remember, we're talking CEO mindset. She has some examples on how to strengthen your CEO mindset. And a lot of them are links to other articles that we may review in the future. But if you're so inclined, the link will be in the show notes. And maybe if I know how to YouTube, they'll be on your screen here. It's what people do now, right? So she makes the last comment of balancing management and leadership. And Jess, I think you've said this in not so many words on a couple of different topics here, but she likens management to the weight of responsibility and leadership to influence. So from a management standpoint, I think a lot of times we talk about management as if it's a bad word. You don't want to be a manager, you want to be a leader. But there's real aspects of our jobs that require management. You're not leading a budget. You're not leading a P&L. You're not, when you're making decisions on what roles to hire, what roles to fire, what all of that, you're not leading, you're managing. It takes probably progressively more management the higher up the chain you go. And some of that gets delegated, some of it gets chief of staff, and a lot of it you just gotta own. But then the leadership side is, okay, we talked about doing things through people. How do I make the people do what I want them to do and set the direction? But realistically, how do I make them understand the vision, understand the direction we're going, and then buy into it with their own levels of buy-in so that they can repeat the pattern as it goes down?
I think we all want to be inspired. We all want to believe that we're contributing to something bigger than ourselves. We all want to come into work and have the knowledge that we've helped move things in a positive direction. And a good leader frames that for you so that when you come into work every day. You can fit yourself into a broader vision, and you can fit yourself into that, I'm part of something bigger than myself. So yes, there's definitely, to your point, management aspects, and those can be taught pretty easily, I think, to a certain extent. But I don't always know that the leadership part is easy to teach someone to do. It's easy to know when somebody's doing it well, but I don't always think that it's super easy to teach someone to do.
No, I think you have to observe it. Is a lot of how I've developed my leadership style isn't really based on, yeah, I liked that, I want to do that. It was, oh God, I don't want to do that. Please don't let me be that way.
That I was just thinking that a lot of how I learned how I wanted to be a leader didn't come from positive visuals. It came from some positive visuals. I don't want to be too negative here, but a lot of it came from seeing leaders do terrible things.
Did we learn through trauma? Is that how this works?
I mean, that is how we bonded, trauma bonded. Yeah. Let's be honest. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I think I do highly recommend this article. It does pose some interesting questions, and it does organize things in a kind of consumable, back of the cereal box way. So again, check it out. There seems to be a lot more articles here on the site. Also, she references a podcast that she spoke on the topic from Lauren Tilden from Making Good. I'll have to add that to the listen list. But I think if we had to consolidate all of this into a couple of thoughts, everybody can be a CEO. It's just a matter of what scope you're CEOing. And you always have to keep your wits about you, whether things are going crazy fast or slow or whatever, and make sure that you're focusing on the right things. Whether if you're an individual contributor and you've got 98% of the problems, or you're a CEO and you've got 4% of the problems, I think it's critical to stay aware of what those are and what they mean and make sure they're the right 4%. Well, this has been February's episode 2025 of Plays Well with Others. If you enjoy this episode, please go ahead and share. Check out our previous episodes that are now very nicely organized in seasons. Season 1's a bit long. It's a bit like Dragon Ball Z with an episode every day for 6 years. But it's good content. It's good stuff. So go back and check it out anywhere you get your podcasts. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, etc. Please like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And you know where to find us because links are everywhere. But drop us a line. We'd like to hear from you. This has been Plays Well with Others, and thanks for listening.